Shabbat Shalom, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Daily Bread. This week's parashah is Parashah Mattot Massei. It is the 9th and 10th parashah of the book of Bamidbar. And my message this week is called To See If There's Any Truth in Them. And basically this week we have a theme that kind of ties everything together. And you're going to see that there's kind of three parts to this parashah. And three patterns that are kind of spelled out and how they all connect together. The first thing that they talk about is the vows. And the first thing that I'll see about the vows is there's a basic mechanic with the vows. It's the concept of basically you say something and then you have to fulfill it. I mean, this is the whole concept. You have your intent or your intention, and it starts off that way and you vocalize that by saying whatever your vow is, but at the end of the day, you have to check to see if you took the actions upon that connect with your words. So it's a measure between intent and fulfillment of that intent, and this lets people know if your, as they say, word and deed are true or whatnot. And this really ties into the two witnesses concept, which is that it's even mentioned in here, a person can't be put to death at the mouth of one witness. It has to be two witnesses. And the two witnesses here, first witness was your word. The second witness was your action. And when both your word and action are combined together, then you'll know that that was true, what the person said. So anyway, there's an interesting thing here. Even when we go into what was said in Jeremiah 2:27, it says that they turned their back to him, but not their face. And so they were still in his presence, in Yodewah's presence, and yet they were sinning before him. And this is the pattern that we see also. As a matter of fact, it ended with Parashat Pinchas, where here these people are getting plagued by Yodewah, and Zimri comes in right in front of the face of the people who are weeping, and brings this sin here. So even though, you know, it's like all this stuff's going on, you're a child of Elohim, and yet look at what you're doing right in before his face. And you know, it goes to the other verse that says, they honor me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. So it's interesting, this first pattern we see. It also talks about a husband and a wife, and how if the wife makes a vow, then either in the first spot it talks about the father or the husband can disallow that and annul what vow she has made in the day that they hear it. And if we look at this pattern, it really teaches us about all of us. It teaches us about how we make choices. We have our spirit and our flesh. And in our spirit, as Mashiach says, things flow out of the heart. What's inside a man, it comes out of the heart, and then it bears its fruit, just like a tree. And what's inside is kind of a model of like the woman. The woman is also compared to the heart of man. And so we see that this concept is that if a woman made a vow, but then the husband cannot allow it. And it's the same thing with our hearts. We do good and evil from our hearts. It's where it originates. If we have an evil inclination, we have the choice whether or not to act upon it or not. We still might have had the inclination, but we don't have to let it out. We can, it's kind of like that role of the husband. We can say, no, I'm not going to act upon that thought. And it's the same way for righteousness, though, almost in reverse, which is too bad, is that sometimes we have a righteous concept or spirit in our heart. We know what's right, and yet we don't take that action that we should take, that righteous action. And so, just as in the model, if the husband says nothing, he fails to take action, then what originated with his wife, it stands. So when we look at how we make our own decisions, we can see that there's really two sides to this coin. One is about self-control. It's about containing evil, and the self-control we see in this parashah with the children of Israel whoring themselves with the daughters of Midian, and then you also see the same thing. They're adulterating themselves with the gods of Midian also. So they're lacking that self-control. They're going after the lusts of their heart. They didn't control and stop at the husband in that sense, didn't annul what had started in the heart, this lust. They didn't stop it, and they needed to. And of course, Pinchas is a great model of like that husband figure who stops it and says no, no more. And then when we see the next step or mechanic of this parashah is the concept then of when you have righteousness in your heart, or you know what you should be doing, our job is then to make sure and do those tough things, those difficult choices that we know we should do, and not then actually be warring against what's good. Everything's a war. It's either about the inside being wicked and you're having to contain it and restrain it, or the inside is righteous and you need to make sure that you're not fighting against that righteousness, that you're allowing it out. And this is really the picture of Israel and what's happened with Israel through the whole book of Bamidbar. As we finish Bamidbar, is they fought against the outside forces of Paro and Mitzrayim and Egypt, and then they came into the wilderness, and then they realized, oh, we've got some internal problems here with Korach and rebellion and all this, and then they realized that when they're righteous, other nations come against them, they can't fight them. They're getting attacked from the outside, but then they're getting attacked from the inside, that their own wickedness is getting them wiped out. So there's this constant inside-outside battle going on with people. And it's interesting then when we get to Reuven and Gad, the tribe of God, and we see that what looked like on the outside to be evil, like, well, we're not going to go in, we want this land, and then Moshe warns them, and they said, no, we're going to. Now we have this vow here again saying, okay, now we're going to test to see if the reason you're not going in is because you're wicked like your fathers and you're doing wrong, or they're saying, no, it isn't, we'll go in and we'll do this. And so he says, okay, we'll see. If you go in and do this, then this is going to happen. If you don't, then something else will happen. And so you see this constant concept of this inside-outside battle that's going on, and testing people's word and deed to see if it be true. It's like you can look at, most of us just see the outside, we don't see the inside. But like Mashiach, he saw that the Pharisees were righteous on the outside, but the inside was wicked. And in the parable of the wheat and the tares, they talk about, well, don't root them out, because you won't know who's wicked and who's righteous. So it's tough for us to see other people's insides. But one good thing that we get, just like when he says, take the beam out of your own eye so that you could see clearly to see the speck in someone else's eye. Well, the key is that nobody, you won't be able to see inside anybody else's heart very well, but you can look into your own heart. You can recognize your own wickedness and your own righteousness that's in your heart. And so I think that's a great place to start, is to make sure that that you're having self-control against anything wicked that you would do, and that on the other side you're also not restraining the righteousness and being lazy like the husband who says nothing, that you have a responsibility to do something righteous and to not restrain righteousness. As you learn about it, you should act upon it. And with those two things, self-control and not restraining righteousness, taking righteous action, you should be in a great shape. Anyway, until next time, I say Shabbat Shalom, and we start the book of Devarim next week, so hopefully you'll tune in.